Hi, this is Carol Pope.
Hi, I'm Kevin Staples.
And you're listening to Rainbow Country
with Mark Tara.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Today on Rainbow Country, a spotlight on two Canadian queer creatives. Music columnist and reviewer Matthew Ellerbeck, plus rapper and spoken word artist Shades Lawrence. That and more on episode 324, so stay tuned for Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hello, my name is Conchita.
And I'm Barbecue.
And my name is Hardcora. And we are the Beat Girls.
You're listening to
Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT FM in Toronto and now proudly in syndication on 12 outlets across Canada, from coast to coast to coast. The Yukon, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the east coast of Canada in Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, a #1 LGBT podcast on Podomatic.com's Gay and Lesbian chart, as well as being recognized as Canada's #2 LGBT podcast on Feedspot.com. So today, music columnist and reviewer Matthew Ellerbeck joins me to talk about Matthew Talks Music, his music platform that offers reviews, retrospectives, recommendations, and more. And he shares how a certain 80s new wave group helped him to deal with his sexuality. Plus, Montreal-born rapper and spoken word artist Shades Lawrence, whose sound has been compared to the likes of Lauryn Hill, Drake, and Doja Cat. Shades Lawrence joins me to talk about music, as well as being part of the LGBT community. Plus in hour 2, music from LGBT artists, independent artists, voices that we've come to know and love in classic disco, classic 80s, classic house, and on this episode I'm featuring some classic 80s, some queer punk rock, and more. All that lies ahead as we start off Journey 324 through Rainbow Country. And our first stop is what I like to call the Rainbow Country School for Canadian Gay History. And today's lesson from activist, historian, and author Tim McCaskill is the early days of the AIDS epidemic.
At first, we didn't believe it. I was doing the international news for the Body Politic when I read a report in an American paper about a strange new cancer that was apparently affecting gay men. More sensationalized media homophobia, I thought. Didn't turn out that way. Some Body Politic collective members were back and forth to New York and soon reported that something serious was indeed going on. Guys who had seemed quite healthy months before were suddenly dying. Nobody knew what was happening, so everybody got to project their own prejudices on the blank slate of AIDS. If you were an environmentalist, it was obviously big city pollution. If you didn't like poppers, it was caused by poppers. If you didn't like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, it was too much sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Maybe it was all that sperm up our bums. If you were a fundamentalist Christian, it was obviously God's punishment, the wages of sin is death, and so on and so on. What we did know was that somehow it was connected to sex. That was bad news for those of us in the business of sexual liberation. We saw a whole community based on sexual networks potentially falling apart. We feared everything we'd built up over a decade was about to be destroyed, not to mention that we were all going to die. New York and San Francisco were already in a panic. Larry Kramer was screaming that we were fucking ourselves to death. Baths and sex clubs across the U.S. were being closed down. There were no effective medicines. If you had it, it was just a matter of time before you died. The government was doing fuck all, so we had to figure this out for ourselves. In 1983, the community came together to form the AIDS Committee of Toronto and began to organize care teams and support groups. Then HIV was identified. For the first time, we knew this was a blood-borne virus that could be sexually transmitted. ACT took on prevention campaigns. What squared the circle of sexual liberation versus a deadly sexually transmitted disease was safe sex. Condoms came to our rescue. We could still have sex, just had to use a rubber. AIDS in Toronto was born in the shadow of the bath raids, remember? We had just moved heaven and earth to defend these places. We weren't about to let them close down now. So while baths and clubs were being shuttered south of the border, ACT demanded there be no such closures in Toronto. Baths here remained open and became sites of outreach and education, and they're still open today. This is Tim McCaskill, a gay liberation dinosaur from another planet and author of Queer Progress.
Hi, I'm Saida Garrett, co-writer of Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mr. Mark Tara.
Up next, Matthew talks music. Matthew Ellerbeck, hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
I am well. I'm better now that I'm talking to you, Matthew Ellerbeck, to have your voice, have your story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond, especially to talk about all things you. Hello. You are a music columnist, a music journalist, a music reviewer. You went to the Berklee College for Music. You are also part of the LGBT community. Let's start here with yourself and your love and your appreciation for music. What sparked this love and appreciation for music? How did you originally get and fall in love with music originally? Talk to me about those origins.
It really stemmed from my family. My mother and my grandfather especially were immensely passionate about music, and my and those people each kind of had like their favorites that they were like especially fond of. So my mom absolutely loved Pearl Jam, and my grandfather is like an insanely huge Elvis fan.
Okay.
There was a period of time actually when I was growing up that when I would visit my grandparents, I didn't know any other music existed outside of Elvis because that's all they played. So that really, profound passion of music, I think really stems from my family. And as I got older, I was able to explore my own tastes and, develop my own favorites outside of what was kind of being, immersed onto me.
Do you come from a musical background, a musical family? Other than appreciating music, did your family members play instruments?
No, which is kind of interesting because we're all such big music fans, but I think that's where it kind of stems from me being a music reviewer opposed to being a musician. is just that music was such a backdrop in our lives. Like every Christmas or get together or, summer outing, we all had to have our playlists or CDs or, everyone wanted to have some kind of music playing all the time. Like it was very much a important pillar to all of our get-togethers. And then even when I was as a kid, like I was very much into deep listening. Like I know some people when they listen to music, it's like, oh, I'm going to throw this on while I clean the house or, do some chores or during a road trip or something. But even as a little kid, I was really into just like deep listening, where I would just go in my room and like listen to a CD with headphones and like really get immersed into it. And that's really how I learned how to deal with, the world around us. Like some people journal or do writing or paint or, they'll talk it out with friends. My way of really processing things that I was going through, good or bad, was through songs and through music.
Do you watercolor?
I don't actually. I'm ashamed to say that my if you're asking because of my site background, that's actually
because it's beautiful.
I love
your
it.
Logo, Matthew Talks Music. The background is like a watercolor.
I didn't make it though. It was something that I kind of hadn't put together for me. I can't paint. However, my cousin, who will probably end up listening to this, Philip, who I call Pip, is a very talented artist and is really good at all sorts of drawings and painting and things. I did not inherit that talent myself. So no, but I really liked the image, so that's why I kind of went with it.
You studied the business side of music at the Berklee College for Music. Why was it important for you to have a foundation, especially in the business side of music? Talk to me about that.
I think understanding the music business as a whole really helps you understand how particular artists or release are sort of absorbed by the public. If you have an understanding of, the business side of things in terms of chart positions and sales and certifications and certainly nowadays with streaming and YouTube numbers. And when you understand that, it can really help you appreciate more as well artists who haven't broken through the mainstream, because it is extremely hard, and the music business has changed really rapidly in the last few years with first with MP3 and digital downloads and now with streaming platforms. So it can really help you appreciate, I feel, the passion that a lot of artists have, because in some ways the music industry is a little bit, for lack of a better term, of an unsavory business. And anything time there's money involved, it can be a bit disheartening, I think, for true artists. Some of the things they have to do to get, your artwork or your music out there. So I think it really helps me understand and appreciate all different types of artists, whether it's, ones who have had extreme mainstream success, people who are kind of on the mid-level, or people that are very independent that only have kind of a core following. And on my site, when I do every month, I do a monthly top 5 of current releases, and then I do a nostalgic top 5 of non-current releases. It can be really eclectic, because there could be songs in there that, if you check Spotify, will have millions and millions of streams, and some that have like barely any. But, if I think it's a really good song, then I want to highlight it and bring it, to people's attention to the best of my ability as well. So you get a really kind of diverse mixture. And I think understanding the music business as a whole can really help you appreciate kind of both sides of it. And I'm glad, because I do want my own tastes and my own perceptions to be quite diverse and versatile and things.
So over and above the music journalism aspect and the reviewing aspect of your music, Are you also looking to impart to your audiences the strategic part of the music industry in terms of how they might be, especially for independent artists, how they might be able to improve their numbers, improve their potential attraction to the music industry, to potential A&R executives? Because it seems like that's what you've noticed, and you're noticing is as you go along, is that the industry has changed, and how artists are using or not using these different platforms to their benefits. Are you looking to impart what you're learning to more independent artists at all through your site?
Yeah, and I've had conversations with a lot of people. I've gotten a lot of submissions, like people have sent me things. Will you take a listen to this song, or will you review it, or if you like it, will you put it in your top 5? And often that will facilitate more in-depth conversations, and like, how did you get started? And again, yeah, my recommendation is always to utilize as many of these different platforms as available, which I think sometimes for a new artist, it can be a little bit daunting, especially because there's always new kinds of social media coming out. And if you're starting from square one, especially if you're comparing yourself to other people, like, oh, they have X amount of Instagram followers and Spotify listeners and TikTok and everything else, and I'm kind of starting from zero. Where do I begin? And it can kind of seem overwhelming. So often it's just kind of like, reassuring them that these things are all there to your benefit. Don't let it overwhelm you. Let it empower you in a sense, because it just allows you to get your work out there to just that many more people. So kind of look at it from a place, a more positive place. Don't let it, get to you. And the other thing, they say, you compare and despair, right? So try not to, worry about what other people's numbers are doing, or, just kind of, it's always good, especially in any kind of, I think, industry where you have art meeting commerce, which is kind of like the music industry. For artists especially, it's really good to scale it back mentally, to what it's really about. Like, why did you want to make this to begin with? What was your passion? Like, did someone break your heart? Did you write a song because of that? Or did you have an empowering experience? Like, what are the roots of why you did this, and what inspired you to do it? And kind of like, don't lose sight of that. I think it's really important to keep, and this could apply to anything, right? Not just the music, just anyone who has any kind of passion, to really make sure you keep the passion there, because if that kind of fades, and all the other things that go along with it, I think it's at that point that it does become really daunting and can kind of throw you off track or derail you a little bit. So don't let those things get to you. Just kind of always remember at its core what it's about, and why you're doing it, and the sort of the pleasure and the happiness you get from making it, and B, letting people experience it. So those are some of the things that I go over with, independent artists. And it's a pleasure too, to always, meet different people and have them send you their work and stuff. So
Matthew Talks Music. Talk to me about what Matthew Talks Music is all about, this platform.
So at its core, it's my little hub to indulge my own passion for music, and that's why I do my reviews and different recommendations and my top 5s, and I hope that aside, and again, what we were just talking about, it's really at its core my own passion project. Like, I talked about it being a kid. I was really into deep listening. That's something I never grew out of. I really, utilized music throughout my life to deal with all sorts of different things that I've dealt with. So that at its core is why I wanted to do this. And then my hope is that the people who read my articles and visit the site will get some enjoyment out of it too. So it becomes something more than just for myself. It's nice to share that with other people. And I was talking to someone the other day, they were really into trip hop, which is a genre of, it's a mixture of like electronic music and hip hop and a little bit of guitar that was popular at the end of the 90s. I don't know if listeners are familiar with bands like Portishead and Massive Attack and Sneaker Pimps. So they were talking about that, and they were looking for recommendations, and I sent them some songs that I really liked and I thought kind of fit that vein, and they had messaged back and like, oh, I really love that. Thank you. So it's just kind of like moments like that. Like, it's nice to find something that gives me a lot of enjoyment and a lot of pleasure, and then being able to share that with other people. And when I hear back that other people are, receiving those same types of like good vibes or good feels from things that certainly I have felt about, it makes me feel good too, that I got to share that with other people. So that's what it's really about. So it's kind of my hub of things. And for those who want to kind of come along for the ride and explore it, I hope they get something out of it too.
And on Matthew Talks Music, you were mentioning this earlier, you have a monthly top 5, you have a nostalgic top 5, you have a monthly flop. How do you go about picking and choosing which is going to be a monthly top 5 compared to, say, a monthly flop? How do you go about deciding who makes it and who breaks it?
Yeah, so what I do is the process, because I do it monthly, at the end of each month, I will go and just search all sorts of things. I'll check out new entries in the charts, new Spotify playlists, what's, Reddit posts, social media, and then I'll kind of from there compile these huge lists of songs, and then I kind of go through them and listen to them a few times, and then I'll really see like what makes an impact to me one way or the other. Because if it makes like such a horrific impact that I'm like, in my opinion, this is just not a good piece, then that might be a candidate for the monthly flop. While what will make the top 5 is, if I'm like, wow, this really moves me. And that could be emotionally, or it could be moves me in a way like, oh, this song is fun. I want to like dance, or, this could be like a good party song. Like whatever the song, whatever kind of impact it has, that's the most important part to me, that it has some kind of impact. Because if the song is, we'll say, just okay, and I'm listening to it, I'm like, that's all right, but it's over, and then there's nothing there, that there's no real hook, or there's no real intensity to it that makes me want to revisit it, then that wouldn't be a candidate to me, because there's something missing there where there's just nothing that kind of draws you back. And I think that when people think of their favorite songs or favorite albums, those elements are there where it will pop in your head and be like, yeah, I really like that song, I'd love to hear that again. If that's kind of missing, but it's just okay, then that wouldn't be a candidate. And then from the ones that do have, a really good positive impact, I'll whittle that down to 5 that I feel I like the most.
So you are a music journalist, columnist, reviewer. You're part of the LGBT community. So talk to me about how Depeche Mode, for you, was important in your coming out process. Talk to me about their influence or inspiration from that group, Depeche Mode, when it comes to your coming out process.
Well, in 2 ways. First off, so I got into Depeche Mode, I was still 13, and like a lot of young gay boys, it sounds kind of cliched, I think, because it's a story that's come up so many times, but it's true. And I think a lot of people go through it even to this day. I had a crush on my best friend who was a straight guy, and we were very, very close. And it was hard to deal with, I think, in the sense that you're so close to someone, but yet you can't really take it to the level you want, or you can't express your feelings the way you want. And he knew, I told him that, I had feelings for him, and we tried to remain friends, but it was too difficult. I think it almost made it worse in a sense, because he would try to be physically affectionate in some ways, like hugs and things, but then you almost feel like, oh, you're getting close, but not in the sense that you want. And, you know, it can play on your mind a little bit. So we decided it was not really healthy for us. And around that period, I had discovered Depeche Mode, and a lot of their songs are very gloomy and have a sense of melancholy to them. And because I was, you know, I was sad. I was a sad kid at the time. It really appealed to me, and it helped me, like, especially their lead singer, Dave Gahan. His voice has such a very deep, broody, but also warm quality to it. It was just so healing for me. And it helped me get over that. And the more I discovered their discography and their catalog of songs, I was able to kind of, you know, relay it to other areas of my life. And that really gave me the confidence to come out, because my family, a lot of my family members were very, very conservative. And I had no, you know, I was very aware that my coming out would not go over well. Like, I wasn't expecting, like, oh, I'm family, they'll accept me, it will be fine. Like, I knew it was going to be a difficult thing going into it. But again, through Depeche Mode and Dave Gahan, it just gave me a lot of confidence to just be who I was. And it kind of gave me almost like an emboldened quality, which was, I think I needed at the time, like as a teenager, like, where it's like, you know what, I don't care if you don't accept me, like, this is my life and I have to, you know, live it how I want. So just after my 18th birthday, I told my family, and it did not go over well as I was expecting. So I said, you know, I'm going to move out. I'm going to, you know, go stay with friends, and I'm going to, you know, go and find my own place in the world. And around that, and so that summer was obviously very, very hectic for me, because, you know, I was leaving home for the first time, and I was moving to a new city to be with friends who were part of the LGBT community, which were the first people I had met, like other gay people. Like, I was in a really rural area when I came out, so I had never even met another gay person. And I had only chatted to people online. So there was a lot happening for me. And so Dave Gahan had a solo album coming out that year. So it was just so perfect for me, because I was going through all these different things were happening. And it sounds, you know, kind of cheesy, but as a kid, like, that album, it felt like it was for me. Like, everything I was going through was just so kind of beautifully articulated through these songs. And when I think back to the summer of 2003, coming out and going through all this stuff, and, you know, having a huge falling out with family, and some family members had just said, like, really vicious, cruel things to me. And I don't have a lot of bad memories of that. I remember I went to see him in concert, and I remember going to all these parties with friends and, like, playing, you know, the songs that I loved for them, and we would have all these great get-togethers, and just meeting new people and really kind of forging my own life. And it's funny too, because that's when I went to my first gay bar, and because of Depeche Mode in their 80s days, they wore a lot of studded leather, and I wanted, you know, I was just, you know, I was only 18 at the time, so it's like, I want to be cool like Dave Gahan, so I'm going to wear this, so no shirt, just a leather jacket with nothing on there, covered in studs and leather pants. I had no idea about, like, the leather scene or S&M and, you know, the kink community. So I think I was really sending interesting messages by my look. And I had all these people approaching me, asking me about, you know, do you want to come to my dungeon? And I'm like, what? No, I just like Depeche Mode. Like, I didn't know anything about it. So
I'm 18, leave me alone.
Yeah, like, I was still like a kid in a sense. So, yeah, but I laugh. It was funny. And it did facilitate conversations with people. I'm like, oh, no, I don't know if I'm into that. You know, I just like the look. And so, that album, Dave Gahan's album, Paper Monsters, and Depeche Mode before that, that was really the start of them and his music helping me through a lot of difficult times. And in the last, I think it's about 3 years now, both my parents passed away. First my mother and then my father, both unexpectedly. And again, at the end of last year, Dave Gahan had an album come out on his own, and shortly before that, Depeche Mode had one. So it was just, it was very serendipitous in the sense that those songs came along when I really needed them, and have helped me process those things. And and that sort of goes back to what we were talking about, like, what is Matthew Talks music all about? It's just that passion of, it's my belief that for people that feel it really deeply, like I do, music can be a really healing thing. And songs that have helped me deal with, like coming out and heartbreak and, the death of my parents. I want to share that with other people, and I hope they find something out of it too. And sometimes, I've talked to other people over the years, about because it was very unique at the time in my friend group, because all my peers, like other gay people I were talking to online that I eventually ended up meeting, and we became friends, and some of them we're still friends now, like 20 years later. They all had very, easy coming out stories, and their parents all said, "Oh, we knew, and it wasn't a surprise, and we accept you." So I was kind of unique in that I had like a very different one. And I remember talking to people, and they're like, "Oh, you seem very kind of positive, and you have a good sense of humor about things despite all that." And I think, again, finding something that you find healing allows you to just stay positive. I don't want, I'm not a negative person. I don't like cynicism, and I would rather be kind of cheesily, optimistic than, have a dark outlook on life. Despite, it's ironic because I love Depeche Mode and the music is very dark. But I guess that's the thing. Like, if you have an outlet for the darkness, then the rest of you is able to kind of shine through. So that's kind of how I look at it. And
do you have a favorite Depeche Mode song?
Oh, that's a good question. They're like my children. I love them all. One that does kind of really stand out is there's a song called Free Love, which again, I think that just the lyrically, it just really appeals to that sort of, again, what we were talking about. Like, I do try to be a positive person and have a good outlook. And I just like the idea of, like, free love, and like just being kind to people, like whether you meet someone on the street and, sometimes someone could be having a really horrible day, and you say hi, give them a smile. They might be like, "Oh, wow, that, someone just took a minute just to be kind to me."
It does make a difference.
It does. And so I just kind of like that notion, that sort of that vibe where let's just all be a little kinder to one another. So that's why I really like Free Love. And then off Dave Gahan's solo repertoire, there's a song called Bitter Apple. It wasn't a single or anything, but again, that song is kind of about falling in love with life, and that was one of the ones that was on the album when I was in a very kind of state of upheaval, we'll say. And I just remember walking around the city a lot, listening to that during the summer, and just kind of taking it all in. Like, it's a beautiful sunny day, and just being in love with life and just being happy, and being able to let go of all that other stuff. And ultimately, how I looked at it was, if people didn't like me for whatever reason, that's their reasons. It doesn't bother me. I just want to, be happy and do my own thing. And if you're down with that, and come along, and we'll be happy together, kind of thing. It's just kind of very chill way of looking at it. So that's why those two songs, I think, are one of my favorites. But
so I just have a handful of minutes with you, but before I let you go, I wanted to get your take on, what do you think the state of the music industry is going to be, how it's evolving, especially over the next few years. Like, what do you see the next big thing is? Do you think it's going to be an artist? Do you think it's going to be a musical style, some sort of technology? In regards to your personal take and what you're noticing, What do you think, the next big thing's going to be for music?
I think the next big thing, I think personally, it won't be an artist or style per se. I think it's the big thing is going to be like a big amalgamation of things, like all together. And I think that's because with streaming now, music is so, it's just with us all the time. Everyone has a smartphone, a computer. You can just stream. And if you go on Spotify, you can find a playlist for any kind of style, or if you put in one artist, it will play similar songs. So I think because people are, especially younger people, because they have access to technology, like, even like youth, everyone has a phone or a tablet, a computer. We're just going to be exposed to so much, I think it's really going to make this big shift into like a big amalgamation where people, I think, are going to have a bigger appreciation for different genres and styles and artists. That's why I don't think it's going to be a big move in terms of a particular artist or genre, because I think as things go on, people are just getting more and more exposed to different stuff. And if you look at Stranger Things with the whole Kate Bush running up the hill becoming a big hit, like even old songs are getting resurgences, and then that can lead you to, discover new things. And I'm always discovering things. And so I think that's what's going to happen. And I think that's a good thing because it lets people have a broader palette of what they enjoy. I mean, I like everything. Like, I even like a few country songs. Do I like country as a genre as a whole? Not really, but there's a few songs that I don't mind. And I think from that to like, trip hop and techno, ambient, hard rock, Euro, like I will listen to something like 9 Inch Nails, but I absolutely love Kylie Minogue. and I mean, and those things don't really go together at all. But I think it just emphasizes that I think a lot of people are going to be like that. You're going to see more and more eclectic playlists and streaming. And I think that will kind of benefit the industry as a whole, especially, in terms of Europe, where they have all these huge festivals and you can have all sorts of different artists on the bill, which don't necessarily have to go together. If at first kind of take like, oh, these are so different, but I think people will have such varied tastes that it won't matter.
Well said. I have to say, Matthew Ellerbeck, thank you so much for your time. Well said, well done. And people can go to what? MatthewTalksMusic.com?
.net, actually.
MatthewTalksMusic.net?
Yep, and if there's any independent artists out there, if you make your own music and you want to, my contact form is on there. If you want me to have a listen to it, maybe you'll be in the top 5.
Hey, something to aim for.
Absolutely. They may even be number 1.
Hey, it's better than being a flop.
Absolutely.
Matthew, thanks again for your time. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
For more on music columnist and reviewer Matthew Ellerbeck, reviews, retrospectives, recommendations, and more, simply visit MatthewTalksMusic.net.
Hi, I'm Keegan Hurst, former professional rugby player, coach, raving homosexual, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Rosie, a new Canadian dramedy set in 1980s Montreal, is a film about an orphaned Indigenous girl, Rosie, who moves in with her reluctant, street-smart Francophone aunt, Fred, or Frederic. Rosie is a Canadian film about chosen family that includes 2 gender-bending best friends. Rosie is a Canadian film about love and misfits. Rosie, which had its world premiere at TIFF, opens in theaters across Canada starting November 11th. Toronto, Young Dundas Square, Winnipeg, Cinematique, Saskatoon, Magic Lantern, Roxy Theatre, and Ottawa, Mayfair Theatre. For more information, simply visit rosiethefilm.com.
Phone rings. I got a message from the mayor. He's going to call me back the next day. I get the call, and he said, if you'd accept, we'd like to honor you with the key to the city. There was an event later that year in May. Just a key, right? Like, key to what? A decent job, a good singing career. It's really a metaphor, but it's history. So a reporter wants to talk to me and says, so it's a key, right? Like, what's the big deal? I said, well, not everybody gets the key. So I looked it up, and I guess it is kind of a big deal.
The date, May 17th, 2018, when trans activist Susan Gapka made history by becoming the first trans woman to be presented with the key to the city of Toronto. By the way, past recipients include Rush and the Raptors.
I'm Sandra Urian.
And I'm Danny Bensi.
And you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Up next, rapper and spoken word artist, Shades Lawrence.
This song is about Canada. I'm here to brag about the motherland. I'm here to stand and say there's no other plan, no return. But take me back, take me back, take me back. No return, but take me back to West Africa. No return, but take me back, take me back. Take me back to West Africa, the motherland. No return, though I learned. Hold the land with a thirst. Gold sand, turn time back. Back to the first land I learned. Africa I yearn.
Shades Lawrence, hello. Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I am well. I have to say thank you for being here to have your voice and your story be introduced to the LGBT community and beyond, because this is your first time talking on the show. I've been playing your music on the show, and here you are to talk about all things you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you having me. So thank you, Mark, for playing my music, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show. So if you have any questions for me, yeah.
You are more than welcome. Okay, you are a hip-hop artist. You're a spoken word artist. You are part of the LGBT community. Let's start with you and your music. How did you get into music in the first place? How did you fall in love with music originally?
Well, I first fell in love with music because my dad used to be a DJ, actually, and he played a lot of clubs and some weddings and stuff. So when I grew up, like when I was like 4 years old, I knew all 15 minutes to the Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper's Delight song. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I loved hip hop from the first time I heard it, and it started to gain a bit of popularity in the 90s, but it's really started in the late 70s from what I've gathered. And Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper's Delight was a 15-minute long rap song that was one of the first commercially popular hip-hop songs or rap. And I knew the entire song by heart when I was like 7 years old. So from the first, I loved hip-hop, and that's how I got into it.
Is it fair to say that your music is political by nature?
I would definitely say that my music is all about the emotion, and I try and put heart into my music. So it's really important for me to focus in on that. And sometimes definitely a political message or a social commentary more. I would say a social commentary comes across, and I speak to the issues of the day that are close to my heart, because my music is all about the emotion. Yeah.
And what are you conveying with your music through your lyrics? What issues are you raising when people hear your music?
Well, I do have a few songs that have been recently released. I mean, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Other Side. That's one of my new songs that has been dropped, which is really all about the emotion and all about the heart. And it's relatable on a lot of levels to a lot of people, but I am also, like, I do peripherally identify. Well, anyways, I would say, like, my songs No Return, Tiny House, Justice, and Peace that I just dropped this past year, I mean, they're about peace and justice, and they're about the war that's happening in the Ukraine today. They're about the fact that we live on stolen Indigenous territories, and that's a fact that I try to keep at the forefront of my messaging in my lyrics, because it's important to remember in this day and age that the Indigenous folks on whose land, like, I live, on whose land I was born, but it's not our territory. Like, it's not my territory, and it's their territory. So, because I'm non-Indigenous, so it's really important to keep that at the forefront of the messaging in the music. And though I write some love songs here and there, and they're about the heart and other side that comes through, in No Return, I talk about a bit about Afrofuturism and a bit about the fact that we're on stolen Indigenous territory, and it's important to remember that. Yeah.
Powerful messages.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important to convey. If we're going to take steps to move forward, we need to remember the history of where we come from. And my songs No Return and Justice and Tiny House, for example, Tiny House is about the current struggle happening on Secwepemc territory and on Wet'suwet'en territory in British Columbia, where the RCMP are currently inflicting serious colonial violence on the Indigenous folks there. So that's important to end that struggle and to just respect Indigenous territories, and to continue to respect the Indigenous people on whose land and on whose territory that we're on.
You are part of the LGBT community.
Yeah.
Do you, in your music, do you talk about that? Do you rap about that? About LGBT issues at all?
Well, I would definitely say that's a super pertinent question, because, like, in my life, I've never really identified closely with a lot of labels, and I've never wanted to really claim too much, because I believe sexuality is, like, it's just important, and and to me, it's like, it's a personal thing. But at the same time, like, in my lyrics, I have a lot of songs about romance, about love, and I am, like, many folks would consider me queer, and I accept that as well. And that's, like, it's not really something that I hold at the forefront, but I try to make music that's relatable to everyone and that everyone can connect with. And if I talk about queer issues, and if I talk about queer identities and queer romance and queer love stories, then it's something that a straight person, a queer person, a bisexual person, of any a gender diverse person, like, anybody can identify with. And that's really important to remember, that we're all part of, like, humanity and the greater consciousness. And it's just important to bring that to the forefront, if you know what I mean.
Do you think that you want to try to keep things more ambiguous so that people can put their own stamp on things, so to speak?
That's a really good question. I definitely find that it's really important to allow people to make sense of the world in the way that they choose to, as long as it causes no harm to anyone else. And that's all of us here. So I try to tell the stories from my heart, and I try to speak to the emotion in the lyrics, in the music, and speak to social issues and provide that social commentary. And that's important to me, to protect the water, to talk about Indigenous rights, to talk about the land that we're on, and also to tell stories about the heart and about the emotion. And if folks want to, like, I don't choose how people choose to relate to my music, and I let go of that control. And however people, like, I've made a lot of mistakes in my lyrics previously, and, like, there's no song that I've really written that I would say is 100% perfect. My first song, Formidable Time, which was the first production I ever made, the first instrumental I produced, and the first lyrics I ever wrote to a complete song that I released first, like under the artist name Shades Lawrence, is about the crisis that was happening and the resistance that was happening at Standing Rock and President Trump's eventual election, like right before he was elected. And that, I think, like, I'm 100% content with the lyrics that I put forth in that song. But every other song, I've made like tons of mistakes. So it's important to just remember that. And it's important to keep that at the forefront, that like other folks can choose to make sense of my lyrics the way that they choose, as long as it causes no harm to no one else. And that's a priority for me, to just let go of that control and understand I've made mistakes. My album Trust Takes Time that I just released, like, it's very vulnerable, it's very out there, but it's definitely about queer identities and queer romance. And yeah, it's just important to remember that I have to let go of that control of how other people choose to see the lyrics that I write. And everyone, I mean.
You've released three albums. You've released, I believe, 3 EPs and 20, I believe it's your 2019 EP, Second Life, that was on the front page of Bandcamp, which is a popular online music website. And I believe it was your 2019 EP, Second Life, that was featured on the main page there.
Yeah.
Congrats on that. How did that make you feel when you saw that spotlight?
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Mark. And is it okay if I call you Mark?
Of course. That's my name.
Okay, great. great. Awesome. Yeah, no, I really appreciate you taking the time, because I was really glad to see, I worked with a bit of a team on that, and I was really glad to see that Second Life was featured in the new and notable, like, front page of the site Bandcamp, which is a great site for music discovery. And it really was like a breakout EP for me. I have my song on there about my culture and my heritage from the Jamaican side, more so, called One Drop. There's also a great track on there about the Me Too movement called Survivor Stories. And the title track, or no, not the title track, but the original song from which, like, I took the title for Second Life, the EP, from one of the lyrics, is called Pass the Rock. And that song is about playing basketball, because in basketball, we used to call the basketball the rock. So if I wanted someone to pass me the ball so I could go score, I would say, pass the rock. So the reason why I wrote that song is pretty much about environmental justice. And it's about taking the opportunities that are presented to us to speak to those issues. And I have lines in that song about, like, every drop of water on this planet clean, and every drop of earth clean on this planet, with, like, all the toxic waste and the radioactive waste that still exists, that's going to take billions of years or millions of years to disintegrate and to biodegrade. So, like, Pass the Rock, I really look at, like, off my Second Life EP that you just mentioned, as a brand statement about who I am as an artist and what my intentions are, and all the issues I speak to with the emotion and with the heart are about environmental justice. And that's at the forefront of everything I care about. And that's the closest issue to my heart. And environmental justice really means social justice. And it means equality for all of us, and not just, like, all of us in humanity, but the entire, like all that exists on this planet, in terms of protecting the water, protecting indigenous rights, that's justice, and safeguarding the environment for future generations. So that's on the EP called Second Life. Mm-hmm. There's a lot on there.
Your current single, No Return. Talk to me about this track, and what is this track all about?
Yeah. My song No Return is definitely about decolonialism and an Afrofuturistic take on my history and my genealogy as an Afro-descended person in the Americas. Like, it's about the land base, really. And it's about the fact that we live on stolen indigenous territories. And that's decolonialism, just to have that mindset. And it's just really important to remember that. And the Afrofuturism comes in because the Afrofuturistic movement currently among Black folks in the Americas who are the descendants of former slaves is pretty much about reimagining our own histories that were stolen from us when our ancestors were stolen from West Africa, or my ancestors were stolen from West Africa. And that's an Afrofuturistic take on my own history, because I'm reimagining those histories that were taken from me and that genealogy and the lineage there. So that's what my song No Return is about. And it's a single I recently released. And it's really important to remember that as Afro-descended peoples like me here, I was born on the territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka in Tiohtià:ke, also known as Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And that's the land base that I'm not on right now. I'm not on the territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka right now because I'm on my way to Toronto, which is Ojibwe territory and the Mississaugas, I believe. But I'll definitely check when I get there, because it's important to remember this history and that this land, this territory is not mine and will never be mine, although I was born in Montreal on the territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka. So that's what my song No Return is about. It's about honoring the land and the waters, and a call to action to continue to protect the land and the waters. And that's what No Return, the single that I recently released, is about.
Well said. Well said. I have to say, Shades Lawrence, thank you for your time. Well said, well done, and well recorded. Well made.
Thank you so much, Mark.
For all things Lawrence, simply check out shadeslawrence.com.
Hi, I'm songwriter and producer Jim Valance, and you are listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Hi, my name is Joanne Vanicola, and I'm an actor and a writer, and I was first on Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on discussing the massacre at Pulse Club in Orlando. I realized how important it was for our community to have a radio station, specifically for our issues, to talk about people in the LGBTQ community and to provide an outlet for our stories, to discuss our politics, culture, and give voice to the issues that matter to us, and of course our artists and the things that we do globally, and talk about culture. And without people like Mark Tara providing a space for this with a radio show like this, then we wouldn't have that voice. So support, tune in. Thank you.
And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. For the full 2-hour episode, simply head over to marktara.com, where everything is connected, and hit the archives banner. To keep up to date with the show, check out my socials at Mark Tara. The podcast is available on all major platforms, including audible.com and iHeartRadio. And finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, we are living in days of making dreams come true. So believe in yourself, and the world will believe in you.
Hi, this is Police Constable Danielle Botno, also known as LGBT Cop, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara